Okay, Bernard, we're here at the United Arts Club in Dublin, 15th of November. We just have a quick little walk around on each piece.
Okay.
So this is the Gifts of the Free State.
In 1937, De Valera set out a new constitution, a theocratic constitution, a mixture of God with the Archbishop of Dublin at the time, John Charles McQuaid. And he gave over all the institutions of the state, all the civil institutions. He was too concerned with the remains of the Civil War and the other military things that had gone on between himself and Collins. But this was giving over the civil institutions, all the things to do with mothers and babies, with hospitals, with everything to do with looking after and the morals of the country, because he thought that the nuns and the priests would be the ideal people to talk about these things.
So you've got the schools,
the hospitals,
right,
the mothers and babies' homes.
And in the background, obviously, there's some sort of religious building. Is that a church in the background?
Yeah, yes, everything is to do with God.
Right.
And
the broken ladder.
And the broken ladder is a symbol, as I believe it, because such peculiar things were done. Like I was in a mother and baby home, and yet an orphanage, and yet I wasn't an orphan. And most of these things suggested that their relation with heaven wasn't as clear as they pretended.
So when you say you were in an orphanage, but you weren't an orphan,
yeah.
Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, what was done was, it was felt that my mother, in conceiving me before she got married, was committing a sin. This was supposed to be the sin of Adam and Eve. It wasn't really about an apple, it was about having sex. And sex was a sin. Sex epitomized something that was dirty, often partly because it was connected with the lower parts of our body, with the body functions of excretion and all the rest of it. And people felt there was something dirty about it. There was always something dirty about sex. Of course there wasn't. It was a way that nature had designed it, and we had evolved that way.
So, but to go back to the orphanage and you not being an orphan, was that got something to do with the period or the rules, or had orphanages not been established at that time?
There were orphanages, of course there were orphanages, because there's always a possibility that a mother and father both died of tuberculosis, or that they were in the same car together when it crashed, and they would be dead. And then there would be something, but nearly always, some of the other branches of the family took on these children who had been deprived by accident, by fate, of their father and mother. But this wasn't the case in my case. In my case, I was taken in by nuns into this big house in which cots were piled higgledy-piggledy, see that in a moment, and my mother and father was taken away from them. I never saw them again. And I felt, I didn't feel anything. I just woke up into this world and there was no mother. I didn't know what a mother was. And so I was in a double disadvantage.
So you were literally a baby, like a little infant.
Yes,
so you weren't a child, you were a baby.
I was a baby,
you were
absolutely. And so I didn't have any mother, but I learned an awful lot later on in life about how good and how kind they were, and how my father paid for me all the time I was in that.
But it's hard really to imagine, like, you know, even within 2 years, from the time you're a baby to being a 2-year-old infant,
yes,
that's a long time.
And
then you spend 3.5 years virtually there.
And of course, they didn't feed me very well. Yeah. Because I'd lost my mother, I was in a state of shock. And so I was liable to get all kinds of things. And then I hadn't been trained. I hadn't been baby trained.
Can I just stop you there? Because we'll go to that downstairs. But in this space here, I've curated
yes.
This is a nationalist kind of relationship with the church.
That there is an image of giving the state, giving the church, all the institutions of the state.
And then we just pan around here. So there's a kind of a conversation going on here with these 4 pieces. So this is the Concordat. Can you say something about this?
Yes. Concordat, the name itself was the name that the arrangement the Pope came to with Mussolini. Mussolini promised to give the Pope the Vatican state as a statelet It was merely a giant church, because actually the Pope had extensive lands in the 19th century, and several of the nationalists in Italy took control of these estates and took them out of the hands of the Pope. And so now the Pope was living in an alien society. And so what Mussolini did, in order to get the Pope to be on the side of Mussolini, was he said, I will give you the Vatican itself. And it was called the Concordat, and I'm going to paint in there of the arrangement. This arrangement from this side of them passing their things on to the bishop, to the arrangements they were in Ireland. The IRA was De Valera's personal army, in order to do anything he liked, and he had come to an agreement with the church, with Archbishop McQuaid, and I have simply symbolised that by laying, first of all, the revolver. He's in charge of the gun, and the gun is the mark of power. The man with the gun is the man that will win. So he's holding the gun, but the bishop is sanctioning it. He's holding the gun and putting his hand on top of his.
A hand gesture.
A hand gesture. And he is sanctioning what the bishop says, that he will enforce it. And so it is a layer of hands on top, and it is just called Concordat.
Right.
To make it seem.
Okay, so this one is the little altar boy.
Yes. And the little altar boy, the way religion was passed on, it was passed on through mothers. And little boys often felt they would love to be a priest in order to ease their mother into heaven. They were only little 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, when they began to think about this. And they'd say, you'll make a lovely priest when you get a bit older. And so the mother is holding the child. The father is the man with the gun. So he is going off in a military adventure up to the north to shoot Protestants. And it was all right to shoot Protestants because Protestants had reneged on Christ. So there's a kind of theology tied into the whole thing. Nobody ever said, you know, Protestants have a right to live whatever kind of life they like. They don't have to do what the Archbishop says. And so I put that on, I give you that, there's the picture there. It's called the little altar boy, and he's been shaped to the Catholicism of the mother.
And on to this final piece, the
This
law
is
of
the
the
law of
heart.
the heart. But once you've got the belief in the gun, it made you feel that you were important. Why were these bigoted Protestants resisting your rule? But so you began to have the flame of a Catholic Christianity, and you began to see everybody else as, so in some sense, less than what you were. They were bigoted, while you were, in fact, patriotic. And so it's that, the Sacred Heart, at the heart of the IRA guys, that made them so adamant. And when Sean South from Garryowen had gone up to shoot B specials, and the B specials were bigoted, there's no point in pretending they were, but they were a small minority that felt they didn't want to be trapped in a Catholic Ireland, and so they resisted, and they shot Sean South and Garryowen, and they shot My Name is O'Hanlon. They shot O'Hanlon, and Sean South used to write in the Limerick Leader a column every week on Catholicism. And there were 9 priests on the altar to welcome him back in the body as a dead body. And that gets to the essence of Catholicism, Catholic militarism.
Right. That's why I wanted to have this little space here. This is the beginning of the exhibition, as a preamble, just to sort of think about this, because the main exhibition is downstairs. So we have this little bridge then, and this is called the Old Wound.
In the small town where I grew up, there was a butcher shop. I was very impressed by Francis Bacon, and Francis Bacon had a lot of pictures of screaming popes and studies of the crucifixion, horrible pictures.
And carcasses.
And carcasses, yes. So this man had the butcher shop, and on a half day, he used to play cards on a half day with his mates.
Okay.
And he used to show where the black and tan bullet had gone in. So he'd take off his shirt, And all the guys would look across and see where the bullet, a horrible black and tan bullet.
It's almost like the stigmata.
It was. But this one here is putting his finger into the wound, because he begins to wonder whether really it's quite as important as this man thinks it is. But the carcasses and the dark green room captured a lot of what I wanted to say.
That's why I wanted this piece in there, because there's a lot of religious symbolism.
There is, yeah.
I mean, this man here leaning across the table, they were having a game of cards, but it could be like the doubting Thomas from, you know, the Bible, or, you know, the story, and he's kneeling as well, like which is familiar with the roseway, kneeling on the chair.
Yes. This is that. And if you notice, it's 2002. That was the year after I discovered where my family were. And it explained my whole odd first 60 years of life. I didn't know who I was. So the two things are tied together.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we're going to